That's the wrong one. Sorry. 2 seconds here.
It was very dramatic. Your home for adventure. Crafting worlds where your story's the center. Gear and tools for the brave and the bold. Your journey begins as the tale unfolds.
Step inside where the legends begin. Maps, dice, and stories, the magic within. Adventure in mind, we're here by your side. At Epic Sages, where heroes collide. Every campaign, every turn, every fight, we give you the tools, you shape the night. Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. With adventure in mind and your own passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction. From online to in-store, we've got what you seek. Gear for your quest, world so unique. Your heroes rise, we light the way. Epic Sages, your guide through the fray. No matter the path, no matter the game, your story is yours, we fuel the flame. Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. With adventure in mind and your own passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction. From your first roll to battles well fought, we give you the gear for the stories you've sought. At Epic Sages, the tools are designed with passion and care and adventure in mind. Your world, your rules, your epic tale. With Epic Sages, you will never fail. Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. With adventure in mind and your own passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction. We light the way, you shape the venture. Epic Sages, your home for adventure. From online to in-store, we've got what you seek. Gear for your quest, world so unique. Your heroes rise, we light the way. Epic Sages, your guide through the fray. No matter the path, no matter the game, your story is yours, we fuel the flame. Epic Sages is where you find satisfaction. With adventure in mind and your own passion. We control the board, you control the action. Epic Sages, where legends find traction. We light the way, you shape the venture. Epic Sages, your home for adventure.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the fun episode 5.7. Don't mind me. I'm goofing up all the time to start off this episode, but that's okay. Let's get it kicking and going and start off with ladies first and our newest guest to the show, Lindsay Sullivan. We're gonna start with you, and then we'll get into all of our silliness. Who are you? Where do people find you? What do you do? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Lindsay Sullivan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Small Business Photographer. So I'm a brand photographer, and I also teach people how to use Midjourney AI to create really cool images. So usually for business owners, but it has a really cool application for fantasy, for book writing, for gaming, all of those kinds of things. You can create some really cool stuff. So yeah, and I'm a nerd geek as well. I love fantasy books, and yeah, all sorts of things like that.
Fantastic. And where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at thesmallbusinessphotographer.com or at thesmallbusinessphotographer on Instagram.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, moving on. Dr. Blake, welcome back. Give us the deets one more time. Where are you? Who do you do? All the fun stuff.
I'm Dr. Tim Blake. I'm a longtime mental health professional for over 30 years. I help people discover, become who they were created to be, among other things. Yeah, I also am moving into coaching and promoting, what I refer to as life mindset. And you can find me over at lifemindset.life and all sorts of things that are building there. So that's the quickie.
The quickie, the easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right, so welcome both of you. Unfortunately, we will be missing one guest that was scheduled for today. He messaged me a couple hours ago saying he was super sick, so he will not be able to join us tonight, unfortunately. But that's okay. He'll be back in the future. We know how he is. We also will not be joined by Younger tonight as he is hiding from tornadoes and storms and things. They're trying to get him, but knowing his luck, he'll be fine. Um, let's see. Let's jump into the topic. So we had a combo tie tonight, or at least on the polls on Discord. That was the what we're using for the title, the stealing from the classics and how to get inspired. That tied with how to finish strong. So we'll kind of be touching on both of those topics throughout the night. But starting with our big title, we'll start with Dr. Blake here. Tim, what is when we say stealing from the classics? What is the first thing you think of?
Stealing from the classics and that phrase is just finding the keys that give you something to move forward on. It's what's the starting point. So it just about there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. So any story is built up. I can think of my friend who really loved the movie Strange Brew with Doug and Dave McKenzie, and one of the reasons why he was in the English, and it was really borrowed and connected to Hamlet. And so all the interplay, whatever, was interconnected. And it's all the pullings of one thing or another. So stories and engagements, you find some level of a cue, of a trigger that spurs things on. I can even think, strangely enough, when I was working on my doctorate and at a supervision class, and we were putting together writings for a devotional kind of in the class project. I was kind of stuck on what I was going to do, and that was at the time where the first Doctor Strange movie was out, so I just downloaded the movie. After the movie triggered all sorts of energy and spark, and I was able to, rather than put down and wait till next day, get to work on my projects for that particular class, and spent a lot of energy on that. So there was that inspirational stirring of the brain that occurred just by the essence of the story.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll get to essence of the story later. That's a great keyword to use. I like that. Lindsay, jumping over to you.
I like that too.
Going to stealing from the classics. What's the first thing that pops into your head?
Fairy tales. Yeah, and just all the different adaptations of fairy tales that there are. Like there's the, like a lot of the Grimm brothers kind of classics, but then there's so many, adaptations, different people choosing to have the characters shown in a different way. And just, I like how people can take the original story and then build upon it, go deeper into some of the characters, put different spins on it and things like that. And even like some of the typical traditional creatures, even like vampires and stuff, there's so many different versions of that you can have, and it's I always find it really interesting to see what different authors, different book, different, TV shows and movies come up with, in terms of different interpretations of what a vampire is, or, a fae creature, or like, all of those kinds of things. So I think that's really cool. And then also using some of the classics to inspire you for art too. So when you're creating like art, a lot of times too, you kind of like create some of those stories, bring them to life with imagery, and like whether it's painting or art or like Midjourney or something like that. It's really fun to see how you can bring it to life, and something that's you've read and then see it come to life.
Exactly. You've pegged a section, both of you. Congratulations. You've already figured out two of my talking points. Gosh dang it! So I'm glad we're on the same path. One of the other ways that I'm going to take from stealing from the classics is literally stealing the good stuff from the old systems, right? In the TTRPG sense, there are tons of previous editions, especially in D&D at this point. You have 5 systems that you can take stuff from them and move forward. Things that if you're like, I really like this in this system, but it's not in the new one, you can just cannibalize it and move it forward if you need to, right? And that's pretty much true across any TTRPG that has multiple editions. You think stuff like the only ones that you really can't do that to is when the new editions only add and don't take anything away from. And even then, right, you can still take the bones of the old system and apply them in a different way than what the new system necessarily intended them to be used for moving forward, kind of thing. Jumping into the next kind of talking point here. So when we're talking classics, I'm going to jump to Lindsay to start with this one. What is when you go to art classes, since you're more of a visual classics is your area, Do you have a favorite style that you like to look into and just be like, things look better when they're in this style? When I look at this kind of painting, this is me. I love this.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain types of paintings for sure. Like when I first started taking painting lessons, I was lucky enough to choose a painter whose style I actually really liked, which is good because then I learned how to paint that way, you know. But yeah, I think there's certain kind of like watercolor and acrylic styles that I like for painting. And then for Midjourney is another great example. I don't know how many of you use Midjourney, but it's an AI that creates images, you know, with a simple text prompt. And so what Midjourney does is it actually learns your style, and I've got it to learn one style that I like that's a watercolor kind of style. It's got a lot of blue tones in it, and it's just really, really pretty. And so I find like that's one I really love too. That's one of my go-to ones for creating some of the pictures that I use for my courses and vision boards and things like that. I go for that style. Mm-hmm.
For sure. I mean, just as a note on Midjourney, that's what we started with when we started goofing with AI stuff for our company side of things. And then we shifted over to Night Cafe eventually, for licensing reasons and other fun stuff that's attached to it. But Midjourney is great for lots of stuff, right? Especially now, it's gotten even better since we used it, I'm sure. Because that was 2-3 years ago now. Cause it's been out for a hot minute. Jumping over to Tim. Tim, when we talk about classics in your realm of things, we're talking more of the people. Is there anyone that kind of inspired the way you present to people now, or are you the classic?
Well, in terms of classic, you hear classic, I think of the foundations. So I think of what it is that you the basic understanding. So they're classic understandings, within mental health. You talk Freud, you talk Jung, and then Christian theology, of course, there's the classic theology in terms of the Bible and the understanding. All that to say is you've got a base. Whoever it is, whatever your flavor is to the base, you still have the foundation. And you build on that. You've got that regardless if it's mental health. You're writing stories. You're creating music. You're creating art. You're creating photography. All of it has got that foundation that you call the classics. This is the things you got to know to build upon. If you don't know these things, you're kind of wandering around without a clue. And so you got to have some basics and some understanding, and as you call that, the classics. Classics Freud, classics behavioralism, Skinner, classics Jung. I mean, these are things to know, but things are way different than looking at the foundational ideas that help form what's going on, or the foundational concepts.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of a follow up on that one, right? Going back to your statement of essentials to classics, right? When does something stop hitting that classic tonature, right? Because like Freud is a good example of that, right? Because there's a lot of stuff in his teachings that are still very relevant, and there's a lot of stuff that has kind of just went out the window, right? There's plenty of people that have disproven it or have done, this is more harmful than helpful, those kind of things. So when do you think in like those kind of situations that the classics stop being applicable, when their essence is lost?
Right. Well, that gets to many things. I even think about the diagnostic foundations in terms of the mental health diagnostic manual. It's on its 5th edition that's been revised. You go back to the first 3 editions. If you were to actually look at them, they were absurd. But it served as a foundation. Classic as it's old, but it's actually refinement, and you're moving on, and you're growing. You're finding what is true, and you're moving away and releasing and letting go of what is not. So it works in terms of philosophy and psychology and understanding humanity. Now, on another level, things like art. Well, art progresses. We got a photographer here, right? And so she's in photography, you're no longer taking the now in terms of my age in the 50s, the old Canon or the smaller cameras take shots. And when we've got digital, you've got all these images, you got things you can do that you couldn't possibly have done, that all these things are old. And you go back before my age to the old cameras, where
have one of
you're
those.
standing there for a long time, everyone looks stern because they're standing there forever in order to get one picture. You see,
Yeah.
well, that's a classic, the old
Yeah.
staying, but it's no longer useful. Yeah, and
Mhm.
even the old Canons, the old cameras of my day with the film, you roll it, and you got to go into the I'm forgetting the word for it right now, where you process the film, all that can't. I mean, we don't even we have a classic. You look at TV shows and movies, and I actually worked at as a young man. Classic, photomat, iconic image is gone. It don't exist. We've moved on. Heck, even classics, videotapes, right?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
We don't. You can still have videotapes, either most likely VHS, beta. Yeah, good luck. But in VHS, you can still find classic videotape recorders and watch them. But now everything's progressed. So some things it's refining. Some things the technology's gone, the ideas have advanced, and others, it's just building upon the foundation. Yeah, keeping what is of value and moving away from what it isn't. Regardless of the way photography is being done, there's still the basic classic rules of photography and lighting and all the like that you can't. And even as we have new technologies, you talk about Midjourney, there are classic standards that even the AI has got to follow in terms of that in order to produce it. If it alters from that, you get junk. But they're refining. So Midjourney, I've played around with this, but I know ChatGPT, the image, formulations now have improved. So no longer you get junk words in there. You actually get meaningful words put into an image if you want words in an image. And so it's refined. It's improving. But there's still those elements.
Yeah, I'm with that wholeheartedly. Lindsay, you look like you had a couple things to add on while he was talking. So what you got kind of on this?
Yeah, I just love that that refinement idea, that concept of, refining, building on something core, but then expanding, like Tim mentioned, like the photography, lighting, the composition, the posing. You can create, maybe some new versions of that, but for the most part, it stays pretty classic, as to what works and what doesn't work. But the cameras are a completely different matter now, right? Like when I went to go buy my latest camera, they're like, the camera store was like, yeah, we're not actually planning to like sell DSLRs anymore. You're gonna need to get like one of the mirrorless ones, And I was like, okay. I mean, and the mirrorless ones are just as good, if not better now than the traditional DSLRs, but yeah, it's like progressed quite a bit. And I actually have like a really old brownie camera from my grandma. I don't think it works anymore, but yeah, I was mentioning that. I was like, oh, I do have a vintage. It's vintage, right? Like the stuff that was old becomes vintage, and then, and then it gets refined to what we have today. And then eventually, I think it'll be a combination of, photography with AI, because that's something I'm noticing my clients are liking, is they like when I can do the photography, but then I can also swap backgrounds with really cool locations. And I had an event where I was speaking called Entrepreneured, so it was for business owners who are nerds. And I was talking about how to create images in a flash with AI. So I actually took one of my headshots and created like a superhero costume that looked like the Flash outfit. It was like, I never could have done that before. So, like I would have had to actually find an outfit somewhere on stock. I don't think they would have like a female Flash costume. And then, it would have been really complicated. But with AI, it took minutes to put me in that costume. So refining things, growing and expanding and yeah, using the classics as some key ingredients or seeds, but then adding other things to it as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, and with the addition things, yeah, we've been doing something like that for years. You have school photos, you have the silly blue background or whatever in your picture, and then you pay the extra 50 cents, and they go, "Aha! Now you have stars or whatever it was, right?" So I mean, they've been doing a simple version of it for a long time, but now I can go on my phone, completely get rid of everything in the background that isn't my silly face, and then have some kind of monster chasing behind me, right? There's no reason for
Right.
that to be. It's great. And it takes minutes compared to hours or days. If you really want to edit an
Yeah.
image, you still can, right? Because there's plenty of image you can
Oh
edit
yeah.
software. And honestly, some of our AI stuff, you need to get rid of the extra fingers and things because they be there.
Yeah.
But again, the amount of time it saves is fantastic. Now, kind of jumping into why we refine and make new additions, right? Because that's something that pretty much everyone's touched on just a little bit, right? But the point for having new editions generally is because the old edition has become too bloated and they have to trim the fat, right? D&D is a great example of this, especially we go back to the classic 3.5, where a good majority of the fans kind of got in 20 plus years ago, right before it was super, super popular, but was popular enough for lots of people to find it. There's like 400 something books that are attached to 3.5, right? That are from both Wizards and outside sources that are D&D related supplements. And some of them are splat books that are 20 something pages, right? That are one specific niche class upgrade, yada yada, right? But if you were to collect all the books in 3.5e, you could officially fill a legitimate library, right? There is enough of them out there where you could constitute a library, which I think is 1,000 books. You know what I mean? And it went on for a decade, if not more, right? For 3.5, it was around for at least one, if not 2 decades before they finally went to 4.0. Which lasted less than 5. And that's pushing it until they did 5, and 5's been out for 10 years now. And they're jumping into the next edition at 5.5 or 2024, whatever you want to call it, right? But the reason they did that is stuff would just there was too much stuff, too much outside influence, too much things that weren't necessarily controlled by the company itself, too many ideas that they needed to refine and make better, right? Kind of going into Dr. Blake's, looking at the old descriptions and stuff. They had to change stuff because things have changed, understandings have changed, right? The basic ideas are still there, right? But a good description, I think, is the autism spectrum, right? Was definitely one of the things they updated in the new edition for the health manual. It includes so many things that fall under that now, right? It's an entire section of the book. That before was, they did cover big sections, but they were very, there was no interconnection. They were their own separate thing, whereas now it's like, okay, they lead into each other, or they're kind of connected, or something along those lines, right? And even with our AI additions and models, right? We went from 3.5 to 4.0 on ChatGPT recently, right? And that's a great example because 3.5 was huge. You know what I mean? Like the amount of data that it was able to create in the year it was in service was substantial, right? Enough so that it was almost hard to kill it. You almost couldn't get rid of it, kind of thing. Like it was a hard coded. There was too much to it. So good luck when 4.0 has to get rid of, because it's gonna be rough for whichever programmer has to fight the Decepticons off for that one. But how important is in your line of work? We'll start with Dr. Blake here. Cutting the extras, right? When you go through and do things, how important is making sure you get rid of just what you need, getting rid of everything but what you need, especially when you're working with your clients.
Right. Working with refining, and that's the ongoing process of when you talk about mental health. We're talking about either working with individuals with what's getting in the way, the impairment, and their level of stress. And so then on the negative side, what is not working, and building up the actual mental health, building up the skills, building up what it is that helps them. Yeah, so that's the whole process of sorting through, that you want to find the things that are not of value and find a way to undo them, heal them, get them let go, that you're able to move forward and get the pieces that you need that help you to get healthier, help you to function better, help you to live life better. So that's a process. So are the things that are need to be removed? Somewhat, but it's a growth process, and so sometimes it's a matter of that's where I was then, but now my understanding has grown. I don't see it the same way. I can think of as I was going through my current journey up to the capstone of my doctoral degree in terms of that, and my thesis is on growth mindset, positive mental health. Well, after I did all that, I just encourages them looking at where to go and moving into what I'm saying is coaching. And then somebody advised me, all the stuff that you've done, all the things you think you know, forget it. All right, and so there's still things, and I've got a whole lot of things that I've crafted or understand in terms of helping people with emotions and the like. But what came of that for me that I didn't have a solid idea. I mean, I try and playing around with things, and then suddenly I'm sitting there praying and looking, and then the inspiration finally hit. I was actually connecting with a group that was practicing speaking and putting together a keynote little 5-minute speech. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I can teach this, I can teach that, but I was locked in on mindset. And then I just had Google from me. Okay, let me see if there's anything that is not. So I searched. There's got to be somebody out there that's put life and mindset together, because they just seem to go together. And I did a search, and there was nothing. And then the lights went on and go. This summarizes and explains everything that I'm doing, everything I'm building, and I began formulating the ideas around what I refer to life mindset. That's not things like benefit mindset or growth mindset or some of the others. That it's different, yet building upon even the positive mindsets that exist out there to be able to really embrace living life and living life to full, not just for yourself but for others as well. And so that was the inspiration of forgetting, what I thought I knew, and being open to the inspiration of what will take me to the next level, to help me, refine, grow, expand, and open up things that I didn't have before, and a whole new language that is being crafted in order to expand and teach and grow.
Interesting. Okay. So, to summarize my understanding of that one, is that there was a lot of personal cutting to get to the refinement of what you wanted. Then, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Jumping over to Lindsay, right? On your side of things, how much is the importance of getting rid of the bloat, the extra, the things that is slowing you down for you and your clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. I think one interesting way is to look at the types of services that I offer. When I first started, I offered all sorts of different types of photography, weddings, babies, brand photography, headshots, everything. Right. But then it's really hard to market to all of those people at the same time. So I eventually niched down to the small business photographer. So now I offer services just for business owners. So it's images for marketing, social media, websites, all of that kind of stuff. And there's a heavy visual storytelling aspect into it. So we're really, bringing their stories to life, helping people get to know the person behind the brand, what it's like, if they can get a feel for the place before they even walk in, if it's like a brick and mortar kind of place. So there's a really deep storytelling aspect to it. So I'd say part of getting rid of some of the extras would be niching down to a particular service, and then the other part would be figuring out what stories to tell, what images to take. We can't do everything in a photo shoot, but we can do a lot. We can do quite have a bunch of different scenes, different outfits, different stories being told, but we need to really narrow it down. That's one of the things I love helping my clients figure out is what stories should we tell? How are we going to tell them? Where are we going to go? What kind of backgrounds do we want? What kind of props do we want to add in? And what should we create, during our photography session, but making sure that we do kind of cut out some of the unnecessary ideas or our ideas or that don't really relate to the brand either. Because sometimes people, there's all sorts of different images you can get, but if it doesn't tie into the brand, it doesn't have a use for marketing, then it's not really worth putting the time into. It's really focusing in on what do they need to tell their stories, what do they need for marketing, and being really strategic about it.
See, that's when you got to hit them with. You can always come back again if you like this one. We'll do
Exactly. Exactly, do more. But even then, it's still very strategic too. It's like, okay, well, we're going to do more, but what kind of things do you need in the next couple of months? What kind of launches do you have coming up, and what do you want to talk about in social media and stuff like that? So.
Gotcha. So your cutting is more on other people, not necessarily yourself, right? It's making sure that you're cutting their expectations into the appropriate size chunks for what they're working with.
Yeah, basically knowing they're not going to come to me for wedding photography, like,
I get that.
that kind of stuff.
I feel
I'm not the person.
not not the woman behind the camera on that one. Got it. Okay,
Exactly.
so jumping into one of the topics you actually touched on in your original statement was the divergence of classics themselves, right? Taking a classic and flipping it on its head. So I'm going to start with both of you on a simple question, and then I'll ask a couple more that follow it. What is your favorite adaptation that flips something on its head? I'm going to give one of my examples first. But
Sure.
Hoodwinked is a great example of classic storytelling that is just completely flipped on its head. It's a silly kids movie, right? For sure. But it definitely takes everything that you think about all these silly characters and jumbles them all up.
Nice.
I don't know if you guys have ever watched that movie, but I highly suggest it. It's
No,
worth the watch.
I'll have to check it out. Awesome. For me, I think it would be vampires.
Okay.
Love it or hate it, Twilight was a really interesting adaptation on vampires with the diamond hard skin, the sparkling skin when they step into the sun. Just that whole concept, I'd never ever heard of that before. So I thought that was really unique to kind of take something, like it's before it was kind of like vampires, they might burn in the sun or like, die in the sun. But that adaptation was not about them dying. It was more about they just couldn't come into the sun because they would sparkle, and then humans would know that they weren't human because humans don't have sparkly skin like that. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a really interesting take that I'd never heard because I read a lot of books about vampires, and so they kind of start to be the same after a while, different names and stuff, but a lot of times the plot's the same or similar, and the characters are the same, and like the vampire, how all the different rules around it, the sun or garlic or whatever it is, those all kind of are the same. So when someone comes up with a new concept, I think it's really cool to be like, oh wow, I never thought of it that way before. Yeah.
Nice. I'm going to come back to Twilight because it in itself is a classic for terrible reasons, and I opportunity to talk about. I'll talk about. Tim, what about you on your set of things?
Right.
What is a classic of something that you work with that has been redone or remade that you just like better than the original, or just like in general, I should say.
I just like, first of all, in my personality, each experience is unique in and of itself, whether it's a story or a book. And in terms of something that put twists on it, two things came to mind. For the television series Grimm, which put an interesting spin on fairy tales and the like in an entertaining way. Put a new concept, so that was and enjoyable. I think of a novel, series, fantasy novel series written by an author named Ben Wolfe that put some interesting, little twists, within, coming from some D&D role-playing game elements and twisting some things around there that just made it, made that fantasy series interesting read. I don't have the exact titles on top of my mind of those books, but Ben Wolfe is the author. So you pop that in, you look, you find, including an ice dragon, by the way. So very interesting twist in terms of his creative mind that he put on some of the tropes in fantasy and that kind of stuff. So, and in terms of just moving and progressing in life and getting beyond just even the standard therapeutic interventions. There's things, if you're always looking and expanding and understanding people, things that can take something and move it in another direction that's not quite the same as what the formula would be for a particular intervention type, depending on what you're listening to with the client.
Gotcha. Okay. Trying to think of a good summary for that or a connection for our set of things. Again, you mentioned the D&D stories. Kind of follow upon the classic of almost every story that comes from the D&D is the tale of the hero's tale, right? Whether it's set up that way and it's super obvious or not, you can always look back at your stories and go, "Gosh, dang it, I did the hero's tale thing every single time," right? Because that's just how the progression for people work, right? It's a basic. We go through this. This is how we experience things, right? It's like 7 steps of grief, right? You got to go through all the stages before you can get to the end. You don't get to skip them. They might be quick, but you're gonna hit all of them at some point. And that's just storytelling is very similar. I mean, you're gonna hit those quote unquote classic tropes that we discovered thousands of years ago because they are the basic DNA for what we're working with, right? Especially in the oratory story things, right? You can have twists and turns and all those other things, and things might not end as expected, right? A hero's journey does not always end in victory. Sometimes the hero lives long enough to become the villain, right? Those are great twists on your stories that you can tell. But they are always that base level of the thing, right? Sometimes, though, we get second generational classics. Twilight was a fantastic example of a second generational classic because it in itself inspired tons of other stories from it, right? One of the silliest inspirations that came from Twilight was 50 Shades of Grey, another super popular book, right? It is a well-known fact that 50 Shades of Grey is basically just a fanfic of Twilight with different characters, which is a ridiculous statement to think about when you think about it, right? But it is a thing, right? It is very much inspired from the Twilight series and stories. Obviously not word for word, totally different characters, and the subject matter is very different. Unless I read the wrong set of Twilight books. There are some other young adult series books that were closer than 50 Shades of Grey, but whatever. The young adult category is its own jar of wax that I'm not messing with. But second generational classics, right, are some of those fun things that you get to work with and see that, like, hey, we've taken all these things and refined it to a point where people can take what we love and jump with it to something else. On the TTRPG side of things, you would definitely go to Pathfinder from D&D, right? That is the second generational classic. Everyone knows what Pathfinder or Starfinder is, and it is based off 3.5, right? It's 3.5 with more rules is the easiest way to explain it to any D&D nerd. But for those that have found it later, right, it's a totally different thing. That it's kind of D&D like, but there's way more rules. Well, it really is just D&D with extra stuff, right? Because it was made by the people that helped 3.5, so on and so forth, whatever, right? In your guys' world, do you have any second generational classics kind of like that, where you see something that had just been refined and it's become its own facet, an important part in whatever industry you're in? Right, so we're gonna start with Lindsay here and see if you can think of anything, whether that's on the AI front or the photography front or the combo.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because we learn from a lot of our mentors, right? So it's a lot of times the styles, maybe not like I think of for painting, for example, because I've taken classes from different instructors, and then you just sort of adapt your style based on what they teach you. So you're kind of learning based off of that. And I guess photography would be similar. Like a lot of my editing, for example, I've done it based off of another master photographer I worked with, who looked at certain things in the images and did a lot of critiquing of my work, and then I'd get better and better the more I worked with him. So I feel like, yeah, you're kind of bringing in some of those elements, those experts, the first version, kind of like their knowledge, I suppose, that they've had passed down to them from, their parents or their photographer mentors. It's been passed down to them from their photographer mentors. So it's kind of like something that just kind of gets moved along. Because as Tim mentioned, a lot of stuff is still the same in terms of the lighting, the composition, and those kinds of things. Those rules are still the same, and that just gets passed down through the different, not generations necessarily, but like basically like that kind of version of it, passed down to different photographers and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. So, I mean, would you consider photography itself more of a second generational classic of like traditional painting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's actually a really good point, because a lot of times the composition in paintings is actually very similar too, in terms of like even the lighting. Like there's a lighting called Rembrandt lighting, and it's based off of a painting style. So yeah, actually the paintings have also influenced photography and the kind of portraiture that we like and the lighting that we like, and people were able to create that with photography gear as opposed to someone painting it. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, or even like landscape. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. You have more to say. I'm going to let you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say even more along the lines of not so much for my business side of things, but for like say landscape photography and painting, it actually kind of works the other way too. A lot of times you'll go take photos of things and then you'll paint them. So you'll go and look at the lighting and see how things fall and take pictures and bring those back to actually be your models, so to speak, and then you then create the paintings from that. So it actually goes both ways.
Gotcha. Well, as a fun side note, one of my favorite styles of painting, I don't know what it's called, but basically they take a picture of some place and then the artist paints over it with unique styles and things. So they
Mm,
can have a base that's always the same picture,
mm,
and then they have 20, 30 unique variations that are on top of that picture that are completely different landscapes. They've changed the seasons, they've added people, there's animals or whatever, right, that are totally different in each
mhm.
picture, making it a unique collection kind of thing.
Yeah,
I love those, right?
totally.
They're super cool.
Hmm.
Um,
Totally.
Now, to refocus, Tim,
Sure.
with your stuff, right?
With my stuff. So, my second generation, but really, I think it just gets right down to refinement at the core. So,
Okay.
we've got some base ideas and concepts, and those concepts, alter and change, or a new school of therapy, develops out of some concepts that twist things. For example, before the 90s, everything was real heavy CBT, in terms of psychotherapy, and there was very little exploring of the emotional side. Just you got emotions, CBT, and focus on the thoughts. But then you had things pop up like dialectical behavior therapy, which took some cognitive levels, and cognitive was certainly a part of that whole school, but then expanded it into a whole person concept of dealing with emotion regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, self-control, distress tolerance. All these things were expanded upon some concepts. And again, at a real basic level. And you got another school that developed in terms of their own stuff, not really building on anything, but really focusing on emotions, called eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where they actually, simulating rapid eye movement, to reprocess traumas in the brain, to build upon just that concept of understanding what goes on. So we get things that build, and understanding it, and how I approach helping people. I've got these concepts, and I'm really going second, third, fourth, whatever, building upon these concepts and finding ways to build upon it to help others, in that. As we're thinking about this, the other thought came to mind. I'm married to a pianist, a very talented pianist who is very good at creating pieces together. Taking some classic, yeah, Claire de Lune with How Great Thou Art. Yeah, merging those together to creating a whole wonderful piano piece that is different, in terms of composition. And even in music, oftentimes you're doing that. They're creating different versions and changing up some of the chords and the notes and the rhythms in order to create a different mix of the particular stuff. It happens with the classics in terms of Beethoven, whatever. And of course, each individual's got their own way of performing as well. So those are the thoughts that come to my mind there.
So I got a
May I
opinion.
add? Oh, sorry.
I got an addition for that. We like to use Suno AI for our music stuff, right? But one of my favorite things to do with music is find a song and hear it in a totally different style. There's a YouTube channel called 10 Second Songs, and that's where he kind of got his momentum from. He's a legitimate artist that does his own music and all that fun stuff. But he also takes different songs and just mashes them together to be totally different styles, or like goes through 20 different styles of one single song with different creations. Suno, our little AI thing that we use for making our music, can do something very similar to that. So you can take the same song and change the style of music to it, and it is a completely different song that it outputs later. I'm sure Lindsay can agree with the when you do the same thing in the AI image generation. It's the same thing where you can be like, I have the same exact words. I want to change this style, and it suddenly goes from uh, Picasso to like classic modern, right, or fake
Oh,
photography,
yeah.
or anything like that. And you're just like, wow, that's a whole different picture, or it's very similar still, but it looks like the style I want, and it's super cool, right? Go ahead, Lindsay. You look like you had
Yeah,
something to add.
Well,
totally.
On that front, take a look at one of the latest trends as in ChatGPT's image generation escalated, and you had the guilty images all over everywhere. That redo of that anime style with everybody's pictures all over the place. It's like because it could do it, and you could do it. It was fun. And it's fun to look at.
The Studio Ghibli stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I was just gonna add on. It's kind of neat seeing how you can take something like, say, a Monet style kind of painting, and then with photography, you can actually create a similar kind of impressionist painting look simply by moving your camera and slowing your shutter speed down. And now you can actually, like you said, with AI, you can actually say, I want like a Monet style of this, but it doesn't have to be like a beautiful landscape. It could be like, like a fantasy theme or something. So you can totally refine it. First generation would be the Monet, then second generation's like the photography, and then third generation's the AI, version of it. And you can even take a photo and bring that into, say, Midjourney, and then say, hey, I'd like to take this, but then I'd like it to now be this style, yeah. So it's really neat seeing that progression with the different generations.
Yes, I personally love doing that for lots of our stuff, where it's just like we take something that we've already had and we just tweak it a little bit, so it's got a different look to it. And when we first did it, we did hundreds of different things on the exact same photo to see what it could do, and all of them turned out great. I mean, that going back to Suno, because we use that pretty frequently, it's hard picking good songs these days because so many of them come out so well. It's like, man, now I actually have to focus in on the style. I just don't have to pick the one. This one sounds good enough. They all sound good enough. Dang it! Gotta do one that fits the theme.
Suno's pretty cool. Yeah, like it's really neat how you can use it for all sorts of different things to create different songs. So yeah.
My new favorite thing I found is you can do other languages, and it does the pronunciations really well. I have a character that
does it? Oh, cool.
Speaks French. I'm not very good at French. But the songs that are about him have French in it, and it sounds great.
Oh, that's so cool.
So going back to Tim really quick, I did have a follow-up question to your original statement, which you had talked about. But going back to the second generational kind of thing, would you say that your psychoanalyst slash the mental health side of things are really like the second generation of basic philosophy?
Yeah, you could say that philosophy and even on the Christianity side, that there is essence of understanding of humanity. And so the basics of psychology is we're trying to help people based upon what we understand about how we humans operate. And so, in terms of understanding, and you add into the spirituality, you go back to Aristotle, you go back to Plato, you go back to Solomon, you go back to all these folks, and that has a spread in terms of understanding. So psychology builds on understanding of humanity and how we operate, how we function, how we grow, how we heal, all those things. In the end, some things are, spot on. Other things, where'd you come up with that? That's a little odd. Yeah, and so some levels of truth and some levels are not. We're just trying to understand how it is we operate. And then people and their understandings, they develop ideas, oftentimes based on who they are, and apply it to helping others. So everything builds on others. You could say in terms of philosophy and psychology, it all goes back to Solomon.
Okay, all right.
And Solomon's got a wide world spread from China to Africa, all over, in terms of the wisdom he had. It spread out throughout the world.
Nice. Okay. So, kind of a leading question here, though. But would both of you kind of agree that the easiest way for getting inspired by looking at the classics is being okay to change them into something that you like, using what you need, and then stepping forward and changing them to how you like them? Would you agree to that?
That essentially describes what I do. I take the concepts and I find a way to understand them, build on them, take it like the good part I like about DBT is the interpersonal effectiveness, emotional regulation, distress tolerance, self-control, those things is the concepts of the whole person engagement in terms of building up those skill areas and those growth areas. So that's the most useful thing I take out of that particular school. And there's some other things that are valued too, but in terms of how I teach emotion, other things, I go a whole different level than what they teach. And that's a base that you can build upon. And just even think, you think at a core, what is inspiration? Inspiration is really at some level of life being breathed into the purpose and who you are, your spirit, and it's that God-given fuel that helps you connect to what's true, what's possible, even what's coming out of who you are, what your mission and call is, to be able to not just do something, but to do something that leads to some change, some life, and some growth, some multiplication. That you create something just beyond a little duplication. You can tell. Even there when something's inspired and something's wrote. You even find that with AI writing, right?
Yeah.
You can almost spot 100% AI writing that got no creative prompting or the individual input in there. And some of it you can go, well, it probably was helped by AI, but no AI came up with those concepts on their own. Somebody had to put their life into it, where there is some creativity and inspiration. We're gonna find more and more of the ones that have no life, and that were just a robot, and the ones that had life because the individual put themselves in and used the tool to help craft it.
That's an excellent point.
Love that.
Right? Don't be afraid to use that AI. Just know that it's meant for you, not you meant for it, kind of thing. I like that. So I'm gonna finish our last little question bit here, as with the topic of finishing strong, right? In lieu of the classics, how to finish something well. I had quite a few topics that I wanted to jump in on this one, but we're running low on time, so I'll try and keep my end of things short. I think one of the best examples that I would call a modern classic that I am currently enjoying is the books, the Cosmere books by Brandon Sanderson, right? And one of the tropes that he has brought into pretty much all of his writing is what his fans call the Sanderlands, which is the last, we'll say, 10 chapters of the book is where all the action happens, right? It is, relatively slow burn. Things happen throughout the story, but the intense emotional things that are going to make you cry or be upset happen in the last 10 chapters. Which are 10 hours worth of audio listening or several hours worth of reading still, but whatever, right? They're big books, but it's the trope that he has created, right, for that one is the hard finish, the just straight up, he's going to pierce you through the heart with the emotional feelings that the book has been building with the entire time. So is there anything like that in your guys' stuff that you finish hard with, right? We're going to start with Dr. Blake here. When you're dealing with a client, right, and it's the end of the session, how do you finish well? How do you know when you've finished well with one of your people?
They finish well when they actually are making changes. So
Okay.
that really even gets to me the progress of change, and maybe Sanderson follows this kind of progression where you start with what you recognize, what you understand. You can't do anything if you don't see it. And then you move into that to acquiring what you need to be able to accomplish it, or putting in the structure to be able to build up what you got to do to getting what it is that you need. And then you act on it, you implement it, you put it out there. I mean, if I think about you're creating your RPG games. You got an idea, you recognize what your story is, what you want to do, you figure out all the pieces, you put it together, then you craft it, and you put it together, you implement it. Well, then if you implement things enough, it becomes a part of who they are, part of the person. It becomes integrated. So when you reach a point where it's automatic, it's integrated, there's no thought, it's just understanding, then you've gotten there. That's the hard finish, so to speak. Now in life we got all sorts of things. We got suffering, we got traumas, we got these kinds of things. When you reach a point where that's released, you're growing, you're moving to an area of growth, and that old parts that were hard are no longer having impact. Well, you finish strong, and then sometimes there's a whole lot of hard, bloody work going on, in the middle of all that, but all that hard, bloody, painful stuff led to the release and the growth and the multiplication that comes after you've gone through. And sometimes it progresses and progresses, and then there's this really hard part. And I think in terms of trauma recovery, the hardest part, the hard work, finishing strong, is when you actually gone through the narrative, you've told the stories, you've gone through the emotion, you've gone through all that. And once you've gone through the real climax of it, then you have a chance of getting some relief and be able to let go and move on.
Solid. Okay. I'm behind that wholeheartedly, actually. Lindsay, jumping over to you again. Not to cut Tim short here, but we're on the wire. So, on your side of things, what is a hard finish when you're working with your clients? Well, how do you know when you slam dunked it, finished well, did the thing you needed to do?
Yeah, when they're raving about the photos, the
Okay.
final delivery, and it's not just like the photos, like they're happy about them for their business, but it's the transformation that a lot of them go through, because a lot of them never been models, they have no experience in front of the camera, they don't think they're photogenic, they hesitate to be visible, they don't want to be like front and center, in their businesses because they don't have good images. And so when they get those images that they're excited to use, the ones where they're like, wow, I actually look really good. And then it just really opens things up for them. And I find that's a hard finish, like the really rewarding part where they get them when they're like, wow, fantastic. I can't wait to use these. It's like, then I know I've done my job, because I know I've helped them get that transformation. And now they've got images that they're excited to use, and they actually want to be visible, which helps them get more clients, which helps them make a bigger impact, So yeah, that's I guess a hard finish for me, is the delivery of the photos and seeing how they transform afterwards. So
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
As a business owner, I 100% can imagine how that would be for people. So jumping into closing silliness, right? Any final thoughts? And where can people find you? All your stuff one more time, all that fun stuff. So we're gonna start with Dr. Blake.
Dr. Blake, you can find me over at lifemindset.life, and even over there you can sign up and get some basic information and primer on life mindset that's going to be put out and released for folks here in a minute. And that's a starting point. I've got some I've put out there before, life, in terms of identity, understanding yourself. I've got a reflectional writing that's free at Life Success Gift at .lifemindset.life. So Life Success Gift at .lifemindset. It gets tongue-tying right now.
It's all good. We got you covered in the links for after the
Life
show.
Success Gift .lifemindset.life. There we go.
Perfect.
You got that. A lot of life though. So you can look it up, in terms of those things, and I'm putting things into higher gear here soon. So also, one thing I have started is on an online show. There's I just make sure I find the link. There's on Faith Points Radio. There's I've got a radio program now on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. On Living Life Mindset. And I'll get the link to Ruka for that.
Perfect. We'll throw it
and the timing, so we'll make sure folks can access that. It's a half-hour conversation on life mindset. So we'll be going into episode 4 here in coming week. So
fantastic. That sounds exciting. I'm super excited for you. So jumping over to Lindsay.
Me next?
Speaking of
Sure.
super excited. Wahaha.
Yeah, so you can find me at thesmallbusinessphotographer.com or on Instagram at thesmallbusinessphotographer. I do have a bunch of free resources on photography and brand photography, confidence front of the camera, but also stuff on AI as well, how to create really cool AI images, some of the key things there. And I do have a free masterclass where you can kind of dive deep into learning more about Midjourney AI and how to use it to grow your business if you're a business owner. And I have a course too that teaches you how to create your own custom stock images using AI, but all the stuff you learn there, you can also, one of my students actually uses it for his D&D games to create all his characters and print them all out and all that stuff. So
We
there's lots
use
of
AI to make
applications.
stuff all the time. It's great. Actually, fun fact before we went off, we get a brand new laser, and that's one of our fun things is we're going to make character art via AI generation to put on cool metal placards or wood pieces or whatever to make cool art for it that way. So we're pretty excited
Oh, so
about
cool. Awesome.
that. But for us on our things, it's April. It's a new month, which means we have a new 10% off code if you get on the website. It is. We'll find it in seconds here. I think we're sticking with the You Fool again. You Fool 907 because it's April Fools. Wow, You Fool all capital letters 907. And that should be it. Again, it was the same as last year, so we'll see. But thank you guys so much for being here. And thanks for watching. If you guys are watching this later on the YouTube channels, give us the like, subscribe, whatever. It helps us a lot. Obviously, follow Dr. Blake and Miss Sullivan here. Check out their stuff. All their stuff will be linked in the comments as per the usual. And you guys stick around for the after action review, and we'll do some music real quick. Dun, 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 dun. Talk to you later. With adventure in mind, have a wonderful time. Bye. Oh, actually, before we go, our guest. I need a number between 1 and 6. You don't have to
5.
agree. 5. Okay, and
2.
2. All right, we're averaging that out at 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, this one. You guys picked the dubstep song. I'm sorry.
Shadows rise under neon haze. Cards snap sharp in this deadly maze. Dice hit the table, spin and whirl. Love's a cruel mistress, a reckless girl. Roll the bones, play the game. Fate's a fire, wild untamed. Flip the coin, feel the weight. Win or lose, it's all your fate.